Welcome to Astrology of the Unknown.
A true crime astrology podcast. I am your host, Joseph Mulholland.
And I am also your host, William Holloway.
We're co-hosts. Uh, uh, Hi.
Hi. How's it going?
Oh, just over here taking bong rips. Just kidding, just kidding. I am thirsty though.
I'm thirsty as well. I can't believe it's dark already where you are.
I know. So I don't know if either of us have ever said this on the podcast before or not, but so William's on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Baltimore. William's in Washington State.
Yeah.
And it's like right around that time of night, and it's right around that time of fall where it starts getting dark here around like 6:30, but it's still, 3:30 where you are and totally light outside. So I'm in the future. What can I
You're in
say?
the future. I know.
Future is dark.
The future is dark. I was about to say, I'm like, is democracy still intact?
I,
I don't think it
as
is.
of right now, it still is on the East Coast. So you got 3 hours.
Okay, good, good,
Yeah,
good.
you got a 3 hour lead time on
That's
the
enough
direct
time.
news market. Yeah, that's enough time.
Yeah.
You're close enough to Canada, right? Anyway,
Yeah, it would take a few hours, sure.
yeah. Oh, well, yeah, the world's a dumpster fire, and this week's story is just an example of the dumpster fire. This week we are actually going to talk about a fairly new case. I mean, it's so new that we don't even really have that much information about it.
It's
So
only about a month old, right?
it happened at the end of August, beginning of September of this year. So should I just jump right in? Do you want to?
Yeah.
Because I got a good intro. I'm going to set this up for you. So easy.
All right. I'm
Um,
excited.
so Burning Man is an annual week-long event in Nevada's Black Rock Desert where participants build a temporary city called Black Rock City based on principles of community, art, self-reliance, and self-expression. It's known for its elaborate installations, themed camps, and customized vehicles. And the event culminates in the ceremonial burning of a large wooden effigy or man. And participants are responsible for bringing their own food, water, shelter, and the community kind of operates on a gift-giving economy rather than money. This event was started by two men named Larry Harvey and Jerry James, and the first ever Burning Man was held on June 22nd, 1986, as a spontaneous act of radical self-expression to burn a large 8 foot tall wooden effigy on Baker Beach in San Francisco. And they did this to symbolize the end of a relationship and a personal crisis in Larry Harvey's life. Sorry about the honking horns. I have the windows open.
Oh, I
Um,
don't hear it.
the event, which grew out of a summer solstice ritual, was inspired by a previous bonfire gathering and became a communal act of letting go, evolving over the years into a large-scale cultural event that now takes place annually. It's become so large, in fact, that in 1990, Burning Man moved to the Black Rock Desert in Nevada from San Francisco, along with the attendee size, which has grown to the tens of thousands over the years. The height of the Burning Man effigy has also increased over the years, though it does vary from year to year. Like some years it's like 40 some inches or 40 some feet tall. Other years it's like 80 feet tall. And then the next year it's like 50 feet tall. Like it kind of goes back and forth. But the largest effigy on record stood at 105 feet. So they can get pretty tall.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like I said at the beginning, there are key aspects to Burning Man. So, it is a temporary city, meaning that all of the structures, everything that is built there, is brought in and constructed on site. And as such, it is all deconstructed and taken out at the end of the festival, which would make any crime kind of impossible to investigate, just based on that. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that we're talking about an unsolved crime. Uh, you know, the the environment isn't really suited for solving anything like this.
Yeah.
So
And
there's
it's also like a whole thing about like no technology, right? So
right.
like,
Yep.
and
So
there's
I'm
no
yeah.
cell service.
I'm getting to
Oh, sorry.
all that. No, you're totally fine. Yeah, I'm glad you're with me. You're already strapped in. So there's a huge art and culture aspect. So the event features large scale experimental and interactive art installations, and it encourages radical self-expression and creativity. And then there's also the burning of the man, who is the namesake of the ceremony. And the effigy is burned the night before the final day. So this year it was Saturday, August 30th, I believe. 30th? Yeah, 30th. There are a ton of community guidelines and principles. I actually looked up, there are 10 principles of Burning Man. There's radical inclusion, gifting, decommodification, radical self-reliance, radical self-expression. Drink every time you hear me say that. Uh, communal effort, civic responsibility, leaving no trace,
Oh, geez.
participation, and immediacy. I originally read that as intimacy, and I was like, okay. Uptown USA. But I'm sure that there was no shortage of that either. But
Oh, for
um,
sure.
but anyway, so despite all of those structures in place, like the guidelines and the principles of the community, it does seem like Burning Man 2025 was doomed from the start. So the official dates for this year were August 24th, which was a Sunday, to September 1st, which is a Monday. So it was 9 days, which is interesting considering that it started as a summer solstice celebration. It makes me wonder what made them move it to later in the year. During the opening weekend, which is when over 70,000 citizens were tasked with raising a fully functional city, they had to endure powerful wind gales, which caused significant damage to many of the temporary structures or even prevented them from being built at all. So they were dealing with this like insane wind, sandstorms, structures were getting knocked over, but then some of the structures they couldn't even erect. So just as the winds died down at the close of the first weekend, a heavy rain began, and it continued on and off for a couple of days, which drenched the otherwise desert environment. Attendees, or burners as they're known to be called, said the playa looked like a lake. This made roads pretty difficult to travel on, and in some parts impossible to even use, causing hours-long traffic jams. So morale was pretty low, I would imagine. The
Mm-hmm.
weather finally improved on the fourth day. The rain stopped, the winds died down, and the playa dried out. And the festivities went on as normal, although I did read some reports. When I say I did a lot of research, I mean I was all over the place. I went down the Reddit holes and everything, and I read some accounts of some of the attendees of this past year, and they said that by the fourth day, all of the all of the citizens, I guess, of the temporary city were kind of chomping at the bit to get the party started. So people were a little bit more like rambunctious and determined to like make the most of the time that they had left. So festivities went on as normal, well into the closing weekend. And while everyone was celebrating the burning of the effigy on that Saturday night, one burner was not in attendance. Vadim Kruglov laid in a pool of blood at a campsite, his throat slashed. Now, I want to say we have very little information about this victim, but I'm going to do the best I can to piece this together. Vadim Kruglov was a 37-year-old Russian citizen born in Omsk in southwestern Siberia. So he moved to the US in 2016 and he made a home in Washington State. He studied engineering and worked in IT, but he was also an artist. This was Kruglov's first burn, and according to Rolling Stone, he leapt into Burning Man with a heedless passion rare among first-time burners. He went to Black Rock City early to help set up the Burning Man city before the other burners arrived, and even led one of the camp's art projects, which depicted slats of golden white splayed out like a headdress framing a heart with a mirror selfie. I'm sorry.
Mirror selfie.
God.
Should I
That
put the
is
picture
so
up now?
that's so 2025 coded. I meant let's just leave that in because that was so stupid. Not a mirror selfie. So it had these golden white kind of shards splayed out like in the shape of a heart, and there was a heart mirror inside of it.
This one.
Yep. And that's this picture of him standing in front of it. It was quite huge. So he built this big, beautiful structure, and it was very popular. Like a lot of people like tagged this or took photos and tagged themselves in front of it. It got a lot of traction on social media. By all accounts, he was an important part of his camp. I will say that there have been some people to come forward on Reddit and other sites wanting to address some strange occurrences that took place during this year's 9-day gathering. I'll get to some of those in a moment, but I don't really know that many of them hold much water.
Okay.
But who knows? I mean, I feel like most of that is just because we just don't have the evidence to back anything up. Like
Yeah. It's
everything
so
is
fresh.
everything is word of mouth.
Yeah.
But but I will say that if anyone is listening who knows anything about this case, particularly Kruglov's birth date, that would help us look into his astrology with greater accuracy, and we would greatly appreciate that. Right now,
Totally.
we have not been able to find it, so we're kind of working on vibes a little bit. So let's go with the timeline of events, and to be honest, there aren't that many. So, like I said, August 24th, Burning Man began, but I did say Kruglov did arrive a couple days early, though we don't know exactly when, to help get things set up. On August 30th, the time of death appears to be between 8 and 9 p.m. He was found in a pool of his blood at one of the campsites. I read accounts of people who said that he was like in some random person's tent, and then I read other reports that said he was just laying outside in a pool of blood. He wasn't in
Huh.
his tent. When I originally started doing research, I thought he was in his tent, but that's how his tent was actually how they were able to identify him, which I'll get to in a second.
Oh.
So, like I said, the time of death appears to be between 8 and 9 p.m. He was found around 9:14 p.m. His body was discovered at one of the campsites while the Burning Man effigy was burning. I've read he had a stab wound, a single stab wound to the neck. I've also read that his throat was slashed. The wound was to his neck, and it was determined that it was made with a knife. At around 11:40, he was officially pronounced dead. I'm not entirely sure why it took so long after it took like 2.5 hours for them to pronounce him dead, but I believe that's because it took so long for them to be able to contact authorities to get out there to pronounce him dead because like, there was very limited, if any, cell service. There was no like Wi-Fi. There was like none of that stuff.
Right.
At least not to my knowledge. Like I said, he was pronounced dead at 11:40 p.m., but his identity was either unknown or it was not released to the public right away. In the days after the murder, the Pershing County Sheriff's Department started a homicide investigation, and they asked the public to come forward if anyone had information regarding the case. On Wednesday, September 3rd, the Pershing County Sheriff's Department finally identified the deceased man as Kruglov, mainly because his friends had reported him missing days earlier and because his tent and all of his belongings were found at the camp. Now, remember, everybody had to leave. So everyone had taken their stuff out. So by process of elimination, his tent was just like there by itself.
But there weren't friends of his that saw him like dead, like when his body was discovered, there was nobody around there that knew who he
I
was.
don't think anybody knew who he was.
Okay.
Because that's the other thing too is I know a couple people who are burners. I keep them at arm's length, sorry.
I know, I was gonna ask you about like if you've ever been, what's your
No.
relationship to any of this? Okay.
No, but what I'm mostly kidding, mostly. But what I know is that a lot of times people who go to Burning Man kind of create these different identities for themselves. So they assume different names. So people may
Mm,
have known him by a name that he created there. You know what I mean? So like
uh,
unless they were able to find his identification, which was in his tent, which people didn't know, a lot of people maybe didn't know it was his tent. So people didn't think to look in there. So that could be part of the reason why it took so long. I'm only speculating here, but
right.
that's
Because
what
I'm imagining, you go to a festival, you go with your friends, and you're hanging out with your friends most of the time. But I
right.
guess it seems like, yeah, there's like this cosplay thing almost that happens as well. And some people go there and maybe they only have friends within that world and they're not friends with them on the outside. I don't
Right.
know. That's what it seems like, right?
Right. So here's where the story starts to get a little weird and where like some of these kind of hearsay reports start to come in. According to the Hollywood Reporter, an anonymous Israeli woman in her 50s or 60s approached a couple who also wished to remain anonymous to tell them that a young man was bleeding out in her tent and possibly dead, which prompted the couple to use Starlink to call the Black Rock Rangers, though neither the Rangers nor the Pershing County Sheriff's Office returned any of the Hollywood Reporter's requests to corroborate events. So it was around this time that Kruglov's family was notified of his death and condolences were offered by officials. A GoFundMe campaign was launched to cover repatriation costs, which is the fly his body back to Russia. Over $24,000 was raised. It wasn't until late September, so like, just a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
that officials said that they had located what is believed to be the murder weapon, a lime green Bowie knife with a teal handle, which
Sorry. It's
is
not
the
funny.
most Burning Man description of a fucking knife.
I know, I forgot. I saw a picture of it. It looked like a toy. I was like, that
Yeah,
you can kill somebody with that thing?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
have a picture of it, but imagine a Nerf knife, basically. Like it
I
looks like
actually
a Nerf knife.
Yeah, I found a picture of it, or of a knife that fits that description, and it is silly looking.
It's like
Um,
neon.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Kruglov's father has appealed for assistance from President Trump and the FBI, expressing concerns about the investigation's pace. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theories range from rumors about possible involvement with drugs, though his family denies any involvement with illicit drugs or illegal activities.
As they
Reports,
always do.
right, of course. There are also reports of an unhinged man walking around the camps saying that he was a murderer. Uh, I saw that on
Oh,
yeah, I saw that on Reddit. And there are also reports of a man, some people are claiming it's the same man, cleaning blood from inside of his RV, which wouldn't make sense because Kruglov bled out outside
right
or
there.
in a tent, not,
Right.
he wasn't found in anybody's vehicle. There
Right.
are also reports of a man being seen with the murder weapon. The problem is that none of these are substantiated. Most, if not all, of the people making these claims are anonymous. And moreover, the very nature of Burning Man makes it almost impossible to discern the truth. Like I said, think about it. You have a large temporary festival city, no surveillance cameras, and everything that's brought in must be taken out, which is a huge
Right.
blow to conducting any kind of an investigation.
And I bet you a lot of these people don't trust authorities or the government or cops or so that's a big
Right.
part of, participating as well.
Right. That makes total sense. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of a perfect storm for an unsolved murder, really.
Yeah.
That was all I was able to find that I thought was
Yeah.
important to the story.
It's so new, but I'm excited that we're doing this because now when there is more stuff that comes out, we can come back and we can do updates. But I mean, the astrology is interesting, and it reveals many possibilities. And so, yeah. Are we ready to look at the astrology?
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
All right. So yeah, we don't know much about this guy. We don't have a birth time. We know that he was 37. So I'm only working with one chart here, but I think it's pretty revealing. August 30th, 2025 at 8:30, I did Lovelock, Nevada, because where it took place doesn't actually exist. So you can't look it up. But the closest town in that county is Lovelock. So that's what I went with that. The first house, the ascendant, is in Aries. So that means that the victim is represented by Mars, and Mars is in Libra in the seventh house. As we know, the seventh house is related to the killer. So the fact that the victim's significator is in the seventh house, it's making me think that he knew this person, or this is someone that he was spending time with during Burning Man. So whether it's someone that he's known before or not, I don't know, but it feels like there was a relationship of some kind. So, but we'll just go around the chart for the people that aren't that are just listening and not looking at what we're looking at. So, Aries rising, nothing else in the first house. We don't know much about the victim, but Mars and Libra representing him, speaks to him probably being athletic. He was an artist. He was an active artist. He was, creating the structure, right? So that speaks to that. I think also the Mars speaks to the way he died, sharp object.
Hmm.
So we're going to go to the second house. Uranus in the second house can indicate that the victim died from a blow or sudden trauma to the neck,
Oh.
which we know is true. So that was like when I wasn't sure if I had the right chart or not. When I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah, this is the chart. This is the chart. And then we did nothing in the third house. We get to the fourth house and we have Jupiter and Cancer. Jupiter is trining the North Node in the 12th house. Now, Jupiter can sometimes represent a witness if there's a witness. And the fact that Jupiter's very strong because in Cancer makes Jupiter exalted, and then trining the North Node in a sign that it also owns, that makes me feel like if there's a witness, and the 12th house being about like hidden things, it makes me feel like there is a witness. They haven't come forward yet. They're holding onto a secret, but that might be the answer to all of this, is someone coming forward. So now we get to the fifth house and we have Venus in Leo. And this is a very important planet in this chart because Venus rules the seventh house. So here Venus represents the killer. We've seen the fifth house light up a lot in these charts. The fifth house can often represent random things, but it can also represent people having fun, partying. So drugs being part of this. The person that did this might have been on drugs.
One would say radical self-expression.
Yeah, or radical self-expression. Exactly. But also because again, back to Mars being in Venus's sign, it feels intimate to me. Also because Venus is trining the moon. And remember, the moon is a secondary significator for the victim.
Gotcha.
So that says to me that they knew each other.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Crime of passion, perhaps.
Possibly fifth house can be crimes of passion. So now I want to also look at that Venus is ruled by the sun in Virgo, which is in the next house over, the sixth house. So we've got the sun and Mercury in the sixth house.
Mhm.
The sun being in the sixth house and ruling over the killer, I think just speaks to, because the sixth house can be a lot about mental health. So I
Mhm.
think it might say that this person was not mentally well, the killer. Not shocking. But also the sixth house can be like work. And so it makes me wonder, if is this somebody he worked on that art project with? Like,
Oh.
do we know how many people worked on it? Because he didn't do it himself. Like he was one of, you know.
It sounds like he was in charge of the construction, leading the construction. So it sounds like he was in charge of the art piece, but I don't know if he necessarily did it by himself. I couldn't imagine that he did it by himself because
Yeah.
it was a pretty large piece.
Yeah, so I'd be curious to know how many people helped him with that, and that they should probably be looking at those people. Like it just
Yeah.
feels connected to that because six houses like work and like, kind of, but also the six houses like those mundane things like I'm thinking of like what's mundane at a festival.
Waiting in line to use the toilet.
Waiting in line to use the toilet, right? Did he meet this person that way? Did he meet this person while exercising? Like, was he doing his yoga and like this person.
Yeah.
Um, so and now I want to look at Mercury because and we've talked about this before, but Mercury in the sixth house can point to surveillance footage, which is interesting because we've talked about the lack of technology, right? Like
Yeah.
kind of like,
There was no surveillance.
yeah, it makes me wonder if someone got it on their phone.
Oh,
Like that might be like maybe. I don't know.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I'd be very curious if video evidence helps them in some way.
Yeah.
We already talked about the seventh house being ruled by Venus, and that's the killer. Oh, so something about Libra. Libra representing the killer can point to the killer not necessarily being the type of person that they're thinking it's going to be. So
Gotcha.
someone, yeah, like where we might think like the crazy person with the knife walking around saying, I'm a murderer, I want to kill somebody. Like it's probably not that person. Like
Right.
with it being Venus and with the idea of it being someone that you wouldn't normally suspect, I was already starting to think this. And then when I got to the eighth house with the moon in Sagittarius in the eighth house, that can be about betrayal. And then the moon is opposing that Uranus in the second house, which is again pointing to the blunt injury. I'm starting to wonder, what if the killer was a woman? What if it was someone that he had been hooking up with? What if I don't know why this kept popping in my head, and I don't want to paint the victim in any negative light, but if a woman did it, did he do something that was like in violation, and she was like F you, and like I don't know. I kept thinking about the R word.
Yeah. And that would explain why like nobody's come forward,
Right.
especially if there was somebody who was a witness or something like that. They might feel like it was justified. This is all
Right.
speculation, folks. This is all
It
we
is
are not victim blaming here. We're just trying to like make sense of
a
an
bizarre situation.
yeah, we're just trying to think of like any way to make this make sense. Nothing that anyone has said in a public space really is making much sense. So
Yeah.
um
Well,
I just,
there's some,
I just keep thinking of like Pretty Little Lies or Big Little Lies.
oh, Big Little Lies. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All those shows. Big Little Lies, Pretty Big Lies,
Yeah.
Pretty Long
I
Tales.
just keep thinking of those kinds of shows where it's like something happens to somebody and everybody is silent about it because they feel like it was ju like a justified action or reaction or response. But
Right. Well, there's some things to be said about that. So, and I'll get to that in a second. So now we're on the 11th house where Pluto is, Pluto in Aquarius, which by the way, Pluto is out of bounds currently. So was out of bounds during this. We talked about out of bounds planets being extra. The moon was also out of bounds. So we had the moon and Pluto being out of bounds. And so it just kind of speaks, I think, to like the extraordinariness of all the things that happened. Because something we didn't talk about that did happen was that someone gave birth.
yes, I
At
read that.
Burning Man, and they didn't even know they were pregnant. So there was that was like that kicked things off, or that was one big part of, it started off and then ended with a murder. And
I didn't know I was pregnant.
yeah, it's
Burning
like,
Man edition.
yeah, exactly.
Burning Man edition.
Yeah, yeah. So that was wild. But yeah, so I mean, also Pluto in the 11th, Pluto can speak to the killer's inner world, but also the crime scene itself. And so I think it's telling us that and the 11th house is about groups of people that have a common interest. So that's
Mhm.
obviously the Burning Man or the Burners, right? The 11th house
Right.
is all the Burners, and Pluto being there, it's how this is happening out in the open. It's like in the middle of everything.
Right.
And then we have the North Node, Saturn, and Neptune, all in the 12th house of Pisces. And Saturn and Neptune are conjunct. I think that just speaks to the lack of evidence and the fact that people are being quiet. There's a lot of missing pieces. Nothing is quite concrete. That's, I think, a really good way of thinking of how Saturn and Neptune is informing this story. And then when I look at it that way, I'm like, this may never be solved. It's like it might really be up to whoever that the witness. Like I do feel like there's somebody that knows something. I mean, obviously, the
Well, clear. Yeah, I was gonna say clear the person who did it knows.
they know. I didn't get too far into asteroids and fixed stars, but I did see two very prominent things that I wanted to speak to.
Okay.
And that is there's an asteroid conjunct the south node, so it's opposite the north node, and it's called Aphidas, Aphidas, Aphidas.
Okay.
And he was a centaur that got drunk at a wedding and tried to every woman he could. And when
What?
he passed out, after he passed out from all the wine he drank, he was murdered. And
Shut the fuck
yeah,
up.
yeah,
That is crazy.
yeah. So that's kind of why
What?
I
Oh,
know.
that makes sense. Yeah.
That's where
Why
my
you
mind,
like, yeah.
yeah. Oh, I used the R word, so I'll just bleep it out. But anyway, but yeah, so yeah, he was murdered in his sleep. And so it's the asteroid's supposed to be about repercussions that happen from losing control.
Hmm.
Like, like being on drugs and doing something that you shouldn't, that you maybe wouldn't normally do, and then it gets you killed.
Yeah.
And then the last one, there's an asteroid that is square the moon, exact, and it is called Cupido. So it's about crushes and stuff like that, but it's also about seduction and love
Hmm.
as a game. And so which it just makes me feel like I just wonder, right? Like, was this related to an intimate situation that, whether it was a sexual relationship or
Yeah.
maybe the person didn't want that and they responded in the way they did, or you know
It sure seems like it was a just based on the astrology that there was like a crime of passion kind of element.
yeah,
So it definitely seems like it's somebody who knew him or was getting to know him or
yeah, maybe someone he got intimate with that he worked on that art installation with.
yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean,
Also, not to assume anyone's sexual preferences. It could have been a man, you know?
it could have been a man, absolutely. They for sure knew each other. This was not random.
Right. I mean, I don't like, why would it be? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I feel like this because okay, all these stories going around about somebody walking around with a knife saying he was a murderer or whatever. Don't you think that that would have yielded like multiple murders possibly? Like if somebody decided that they wanted to like start killing people or somebody had a mental health break, like, and their way of presenting that was by killing people. Like, don't you think that there would be more than one person? And
Yeah,
don't you think somebody would have seen something if somebody just like snapped?
right. Like if it was random and somebody saw something, there would be more people coming forward. But like you
Yeah,
said, it's almost like there's like a code of silence almost.
right. But also,
Or he didn't have a lot of actual friends there. I don't know.
another thing to keep in mind is that, there were 70,000 people there. 90% of them, that was the percentage that I saw, 90% of them were estimated to be at the effigy burning, which I
Wow.
don't know what that would mean for like the number of people that were trailing behind or who didn't attend, but
Yeah.
that's that would be it would be under it'd be under 10,000 people because it was 70,000 people total. So I can't math. It's not like there were 70,000 people just like wandering around going about their day. The crowds around the individual camps were dwindling because everyone was going to the effigy burning. So, but the other thing that I was going to say, I think it's interesting that this is only our fourth episode, and our previous episodes have been, pretty chock full of information about the victim. But I feel like this time, because it's so new, we don't even have his birthday to even look at
Yeah.
his chart. We aren't even really clear on what happened because, you know, no one's really come forward with any sort of substantial stories. There was no surveillance that we know of. We have nothing. We just have like a dead guy and like a weird Fisher Price knife.
Yeah.
But despite all of that, I feel like we have a much clearer theory of what could have happened based on the
Yeah.
astrology. And this is one of those, I just think this is one of those situations where astrology can be really helpful and maybe seeing trying to make sense of something or trying to get a picture of a possible theory. Not that any of this should be taken legitimately, like this is all for entertainment
For
purposes.
entertainment purposes only.
But you know, I don't know. I think it's a solid, I think you got a solid theory.
I think
Um,
so too. I mean, and we're gonna keep our eyes on this one.
yeah, I think part of the reason why we wanted to do this episode, even though it is so new and the information that we have is very little, I think we wanted something new just to see how it develops in real time, kind of, and to see, if anything comes out about this, we'll do some updates and kind of look back at the astrology and see if any of what we're predicting or seeing in the astrology matches up to what we're able to find. I really hope that there are some updates soon.
But yeah, let us know what you think about what could have possibly happened. So keep sharing your ideas about what you think has been going on, and we're gonna share some of everybody's theories. Some of these theories I didn't even thought to think of. So
So stick around. We'll have some interesting and weird and wacky stuff coming your way soon.
what did you say last time? What, how do we close it? You said
I don't remember.
keep your powder dry and your mysteries solved.
Keep your powder dry and your mysteries solved. Think about it. I haven't.
Bye.
Bye.